The rescue. Zara's purple skin had turned pale from thirst. Her long silver hair was dirty and tangled as she lay on the cold floor of her prison cell. The chains around her wrists made soft clicking sounds as she shivered. It had been 3 days since the guards gave her water. 3 long days of hoping someone would help her. The prison was quiet except for the hum of force fields and the distant sound of guard patrols. Zara's pointed ears twitched at the sound of footsteps coming closer. Different footsteps. Not the heavy boots of her people's guards, but lighter steps, careful steps. A shadow appeared outside her cell. Zara held her breath, expecting another cruel guard. But the figure that stepped into view wasn't like any creature she had ever seen. It walked on 2 legs, but its skin was a color she had never seen on her world. Pink brown, like the sunset. A human. The human's eyes went wide at the sight of her. He pressed a finger to his lips in the universal sign for silence. He pulled out a strange device and pointed it at the cell's lock. A soft blue light flickered, and the force field disappeared with a quiet buzz. Water. Zara whispered in her language, her throat too dry to speak properly. The human seemed to understand. He pulled out a container filled with clear liquid. Kneeling beside her, he helped her drink slowly. The water felt like life itself flowing down her throat. Easy, he said in simple trade language. Small sips. I'm Jake. I'm here to help. Tears mixed with the water on Zara's face. She hadn't expected kindness from anyone, especially not from a species she had only heard stories about. Stories that clearly weren't true, because this human was showing more compassion than her own people had. Jake worked quickly on her chains with his strange tool. Can you walk? He asked as the last chain fell away. Zara tried to stand, but her legs were weak. Jake caught her before she fell and helped steady her. That's when they heard the alarm. BWEP, BWEP, BWE. Someone's noticed the power fluctuation, Jake said. We need to move. Now. He helped Zara toward the cell door, but she pulled back. The other prisoners, she whispered. Jake shook his head. My ship only has room for 2. But I promise we'll come back for them. The sound of running boots echoed down the corridor. Jake pulled out another device, some kind of weapon. Stay behind me, he said. They moved as fast as Zara's weak legs would allow. Jake seemed to know exactly where to go, turning down corridors before patrols appeared. When they did run into guards, his weapon fired bursts of blue energy that knocked them unconscious without killing them. Almost there, Jake said as they reached a maintenance tunnel. My ship is hidden just outside. That's when the biggest guard Zara had ever seen stepped out in front of them. Captain Dorn, her former trainer who had laughed while throwing her in the cell. Little princess, Dorn growled, running away with a primitive alien. Jake stepped forward, placing himself between Zara and the massive guard. She's not your prisoner anymore. Dorn laughed and pulled out his shock staff. You don't know what she did, human. What her family did. Don't care, Jake said. Nobody deserves to die of thirst in a cell. The guard charged forward, but Jake was ready. He rolled under the shock staff's swing and fired his weapon at point-blank range into Dorn's chest. The huge guard crashed to the floor, stunned. Come on. Jake grabbed Zara's hand, and they ran. The maintenance tunnel led them to a small opening in the prison's outer wall. Cool night air hit Zara's face for the first time in weeks, and there, hidden under camouflage netting, was a sleek ship unlike anything she had seen before. Jake helped her inside just as prison spotlights began sweeping the area. The ship's engines hummed to life as he jumped into the pilot's seat. Hang on, he said, fingers flying over the controls. This is where it gets fun. The ship lifted off just as alarm sirens began blaring across the prison complex. Through the viewport, Zara watched her prison disappear below them as they shot up into the night sky. She was free. But as her planet grew smaller behind them, she knew this was just the beginning. Because soon, They would both discover that her rescue wasn't just about saving one prisoner. It was about uncovering a truth that would shake two worlds. Trust builds. Jake's ship shuddered as it pushed through the atmosphere. In the passenger seat, Zora watched in fascination as her homeworld's 3 moons grew smaller behind them. Her hands trembled as she tried to drink from a water container, spilling some on her tattered prison clothes. "Here," Jake said, reaching over to steady her hands. "Your body's still weak from dehydration." But it wasn't just weakness making her shake. For the first time, Zora noticed strange markings on her purple skin. Dark patches that seemed to be spreading from where the chains had been. "Jake," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Something's wrong." Jake looked over, and his eyes went wide. "Those chains, they weren't just for holding you, were they?" Zora shook her head, fear creeping into her voice. "Punishment chains. They're designed to break the spirit of royal family members who disobey." The ship's medical scanner beeped urgently. Jake checked the readings and cursed under his breath. The chains were pumping some kind of toxin into your system. Why would they do this to their own royalty? Zora's vision began to blur. "Because I found out the truth about the mind gardens." "The what?" But before she could answer, Zora collapsed in her seat. The dark patches were spreading faster now. Jake quickly set the ship on autopilot and moved to help her. He pulled out a medical kit, but nothing in it was designed for alien biology. Then he remembered something. A strange old woman he'd met in the trading outpost who'd given him a glowing blue crystal. "For when death walks in chains," the woman had said. Jake had thought she was crazy, but now. He pulled out the crystal from his pocket. It pulsed with an inner light that seemed to react to Zora's presence. Following his instincts, he pressed it against one of the dark patches on her arm. The crystal shattered into fine powder that sank into Zora's skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her back arched, and she gasped as waves of blue light pulsed through her body, pushing back the darkness. "The mind gardens," she mumbled as consciousness returned. "They're not meditation centers like everyone believes. They're where they keep the dreamers." "What dreamers?" "My people. We're not just one species. We're two. Surface dwellers like me. And the dreamers, they live in underground lakes, connecting their minds to share visions of possible futures." Zora's eyes filled with tears. "The royal family has been enslaving them, using their visions to maintain power. I found out and tried to free them." Jake sat back, processing this revelation. "That's why they locked you up. But why not just kill you?" "Public execution of royalty is forbidden. They were going to make it look like I died from illness." She looked at her hands where the dark patches were fading. "What did you do?" "I'm not sure," Jake admitted. "An old woman gave me that crystal. Said I'd need it." Zora's eyes widened. "A woman with silver scales instead of skin." "Yeah. How did you?" "She's one of the dreamers. They must have seen this happening. Seen you rescuing me." Zora tried to stand, but Jake gently pushed her back into the seat. "Easy. You still need to recover." Suddenly, the ship's alarm system blared to life. 3 dots appeared on the radar, moving fast. "Royal pursuit ships," Zora said, recognizing their signal pattern. "They're not supposed to leave the atmosphere without council approval. They're breaking their own laws to chase us." Jake's hands flew over the controls. They must really want to keep those mind gardens secret. He looked at Zora. "I know you're weak, but I could use a co-pilot. Your people's ships have a weakness, right?" A small smile appeared on Zora's face, her first since the rescue. The radiation shielding around their engines hit it with the right frequency. And boom, Jake grinned. "No, better. Their systems will think they're about to explode. They'll have to return to the surface." She paused. "No one dies." "I like how you think, princess." "Don't call me princess," she said, pulling herself up to reach the co-pilot controls. "Princesses sit in palaces. Right now, I'd rather be a warrior." The pursuit ships were getting closer, But as Zora's fingers danced over the unfamiliar human controls, she felt something she hadn't experienced since finding the truth about the Mind Gardens. Hope, because now she wasn't fighting alone. And soon, very soon, her people would learn the truth, both species of them. The real question was, were the dreamer's visions always accurate? Because if they were, the crystal that saved her life was just the beginning of a much stranger journey. Space chase. The pursuing ships disappeared from radar exactly as Zora had predicted. But Jake didn't look relieved. "That was too easy," he said, checking the ship's sensors again. "Your people invented faster than light travel. They wouldn't give up because of a little engine scare." Zora was about to respond when something strange happened. The crystal powder still glowing beneath her skin began to pulse with a rhythm that matched the ship's warning sensors. Her eyes went wide. "Jake, stop the ship." "What? Why?" "Trust me." Jake hit the emergency brake thrusters. The ship lurched to a halt in space just as a massive vessel materialized in front of them, a royal command ship using advanced cloaking technology. It was nearly 50 times the size of Jake's ship. "How did you know?" Jake asked, staring at the enormous vessel. Zora touched her glowing skin. I think I'm connected to them now. The dreamers. I can feel their visions." She closed her eyes. "There's more. The woman who gave you the crystal, she's on that ship. They're taking her to the capital." The command ship's communication system crackled to life. A deep voice boomed through their speakers. "Attention, human vessel. This is High Commander Vex. Return the princess and we will spare your life. You have 1 minute to comply." Jake looked at Zora. "Friends of yours. Vex is my uncle. He's the one who created the Mind Gardens program." Her face hardened. "He's also the one who ordered the dreamers to be enslaved." 30 seconds, Vex's voice warned. Jake's hands hovered over the controls. "Please tell me you have another clever trick." Zora's skin pulsed with blue light again. Images flashed through her mind. Possible futures shown to her by the imprisoned dreamers. Most ended in their capture or death. But one was different. "The ship's waste disposal system," she said suddenly. "Can you trigger it remotely?" Jake blinked. "Yeah, but..." "Do it. And when I say so, fly straight at the command ship's bridge." "That's insane. They're shields." 20 seconds, Vex reminded them. Zora grabbed Jake's hand. Her skin was glowing brighter now. "The dreamers showed me. The crystal isn't just medicine. It's their technology. They've been hiding it in plain sight, disguised as religious tokens. Trust me." Jake looked into her eyes for a moment, then nodded. He entered commands into the system. 10 seconds. "Now," Zora shouted. Jake triggered the waste disposal and gunned the engines. A cloud of frozen waste particles sprayed out behind them as they shot toward the command ship's bridge. The massive vessel's shields sparkled as they absorbed the waste, exactly as planned. Because the real attack wasn't the waste. It was the tiny particles of dreamer crystal hidden in Zora's tattered prison clothes, which she had quietly torn off and mixed into the waste disposal system. As the shield absorbed the frozen particles, it also absorbed the crystal. The effect was immediate. The command ship's shields began to glow with the same blue light that pulsed through Zora's skin. Then, to Jake's astonishment, the shields simply vanished. But Zora wasn't done. She placed her glowing hand on the ship's control panel. Suddenly, every system in Jake's small vessel surged with power as the dreamer technology interfaced with it. "Hold on," she yelled. Their ship shot forward faster than should have been possible, straight through where the shields had been. They skimmed the surface of the command ship, so close they could see the shocked faces of the bridge crew through the viewports. At that moment, every crystal fragment embedded in the shield activated at once, creating a cascading power failure through the massive vessel's systems. They were past the command ship in seconds, already far out of range by the time emergency power came online. "That," Jake said as he stared at their impossibly high speed readings, was definitely not in my ship's specifications. Zora slumped in her seat, exhausted but smiling. The dreamers didn't just see the future. They'd been planning this for centuries, hiding their technology as decorations, meditation crystals, royal jewelry. She touched her glowing skin. And now they found a way to connect with surface dwellers. Your uncle isn't going to be happy about this. No, Zora agreed. But we have bigger problems. She pointed at a series of coordinates appearing on the screen, pushed into the ship's computer through her connection with the Dreamer technology. The woman who gave you the crystal. I can feel her calling. They're taking her to the capital because she's special. She's the last of the original Dreamers, from before the enslavement. She knows how to free all of them. Jake set course for the coordinates. Then I guess we're going to the capital. It's a trap. Obviously. We'll probably die. Jake grinned. Probably. But dying's better than wondering what would have happened if we didn't try. As their enhanced ship streaked through space, neither of them noticed the tiny light blinking under the control panel, a royal tracker, attached when they were too busy watching the command ship's bridge. High Commander Vex smiled as the signal came through on his personal monitor. Everything was proceeding exactly as he had foreseen, because what Zora didn't know was that her uncle had his own supply of Dreamer crystals and his own plans for their power. Hidden base. The ship's systems flickered as Jake guided them through a dense asteroid field. The Dreamer crystal's power was fading, and with it, the ship's enhanced capabilities. Zara sat with her eyes closed, concentrating on the faint visions still pulsing through her mind. We can't go to the capital yet, she said suddenly. There's something we need to see first. Jake glanced at the fuel gauge. We don't have much choice. We need to land soon. There. Zora pointed to what looked like a larger asteroid. The Dreamers are showing me. It's not what it seems. As they got closer, the asteroid's surface seemed to shimmer. A holographic disguise melted away, revealing a hidden station built into the rock. The design was unlike anything either of them had seen, a mix of human and alien technology. Impossible, Jake whispered. That's an Earth Alliance logo. A communication channel crackled open. A friendly voice spoke. Unidentified vessel, you're carrying Dreamer crystal radiation. Welcome home. The asteroid's surface split open, revealing a docking bay. Jake and Zara shared a confused look before carefully landing inside. As the bay doors closed behind them, they saw something extraordinary. Dozens of ships, each one different, each one carrying rescue aliens of various species. A small welcoming committee waited for them. 3 humans and 2 aliens Zora had never seen before. But what made her gasp was the marking on their uniforms, the same crystal pattern that now glowed beneath her skin. Welcome to Haven Station, said a tall woman with cybernetic implants around her eyes. I'm Commander Sarah Chen. We've been expecting you. You have? Jake asked. The Dreamers told us you were coming. They'd been helping us rescue political prisoners across 3 sectors. Sarah smiled. Though you're our first royal defector, Princess Zora. Zara stepped forward. You know about the Mind Gardens. We know everything, said one of the aliens, his crystalline skin glowing with familiar blue light. I am Karel, a free dreamer. We've been working with the Earth Alliance for decades, preparing for this moment. What moment? Jake asked. Before Karel could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. A junior officer ran up to Commander Chen. Multiple ships just dropped out of hyperspace, he reported. Royal signatures. They're holding position just outside scanner range. How did they find us? Jake wondered. Then he saw Zora checking under their ship's control panel. A tracker, she said, holding up a tiny device. We led them right to you. I'm so sorry. But Commander Chen didn't look worried. Actually, this is perfect. Perfect, Jake and Zara said together. Karel's crystal skin pulsed with light. Let me show you why. He led them deeper into the station, through corridors filled with rescued aliens and human personnel working together. They entered a vast chamber that made Zora's heart stop. Floating in tanks of luminescent liquid were dreamers, hundreds of them. But they weren't prisoners. They were healing. Every prisoner we rescue, Corell explained, helps us free more dreamers from the mind gardens. Each freed dreamer strengthens our network. And now, he touched Zora's glowing skin. Instantly, her mind exploded with visions, not just of possible futures, but of what was happening right now across the galaxy. Thousands of mind gardens, and in each one, the enslaved dreamers were awakening. "The crystal in your blood," Commander Chen said, "was the key we've been waiting for. Royal blood, freely given to save a dreamer. It completes the circle. The dreamers can now share their power with surface dwellers who prove worthy." "Like me," Zora whispered, understanding finally dawning. "Like both of you," Corell corrected, looking at Jake. "The crystal chose him first." New alarms sounded. The royal fleet was moving closer. "Your uncle thinks he's chasing you," Commander Chen said, "but we've been laying this trap for years. Every ship in his fleet has dreamer crystals hidden in their core systems, placed there by resistance members in their construction yards. Then we can shut them down," Jake asked. "Better." Zora's eyes glowed with crystal light. "We can show them the truth. Every officer, every crew member. They'll see what's really happening in the mind gardens." "It could start a civil war," Jake warned. "The war already started," Corell said softly, "the day they imprisoned the first dreamer." Commander Chen turned to Zora. "You have a choice, Princess. We can evacuate Haven Station. Let your uncle think he's won. Or we can show everyone the truth," Zora finished. She looked at Jake. "Even if it tears my world apart." Jake took her hand. "Truth has a way of doing that. The real question is, what will you build from the pieces?" Through her connection to the Dreamer Network, Zora could see the royal fleet approaching, led by her uncle, coming to drag her back to a gilded cage. But she wasn't the same person they had chained in that cell. She was something new, something that had never existed before. A bridge between two peoples, a key to revolution. And as Haven Station's defenders moved to battle stations, as the Dreamer Network hummed with power, as Jake squeezed her hand in support, Zora made her choice. It was time for everyone to wake up from the dream. But in the deepest tank, hidden behind all the others, something stirred. The original dreamer, the one who had given Jake the crystal, opened her eyes. And she smiled, because everything was proceeding exactly as she had foreseen, including the one vision she hadn't shared with anyone. The one that showed what would happen after the truth was revealed. The one that made her wonder if some dreams were better left as nightmares. The plan. The royal fleet hung in space like a swarm of predatory birds, their weapons primed. Inside Haven Station, Zora stood before a sea of glowing screens, each showing a different part of her home planet. The mind gardens glowed like blue veins across the surface. "We have 17 minutes before they're in firing range," Commander Chen announced. But Zora wasn't listening. Her attention was fixed on one particular screen, a live feed from the deepest mind garden, where something impossible was happening. The enslaved dreamers were changing, their crystalline skin growing opaque, turning black. "Corell," she called out urgently, "look at this." The free dreamer's glow dimmed when he saw the screen. "No, it's happening too fast." "What's happening too fast?" Jake asked. But then he saw it too. The black crystal was spreading, infecting other dreamers. "Corruption," Corell whispered. "Your uncle, he's not just enslaving dreamers, he's corrupting them, turning them into weapons." New alarms blared. Commander Chen's cybernetic eyes whirred as she processed incoming data. "We're detecting energy signatures from the mind gardens. They're powering up." Suddenly, the original dreamer, the ancient one who had given Jake the crystal, burst from her tank, sending luminescent liquid spraying across the floor. "Stop," she screamed. "You can't broadcast the truth to the fleet. That's what they want." "What do you mean?" Zara asked. The crystals in their ships were planted by Vex's agents, not the Resistance. The ancient dreamer's silver scales rippled with urgency. "I've seen this future too many times. The moment you try to show the truth, the corrupted dreamers will use the broadcast network to infect every crystal in the sector, including—" She pointed at Zara's glowing skin. Jake stepped between them. "You knew this would happen. Why didn't you warn us?" "Because we needed them to think their plan was working." The ancient dreamer touched Zara's hand, sharing a vision. Zara gasped as she saw it. The true history of her people. The surface dwellers hadn't enslaved the dreamers. They had been trying to protect them. The mind gardens were originally sanctuaries, built to hide the dreamers from something worse. "The Void Ones," Zara whispered, the ancient name sending chills through her body. The stories were true. "They're coming back." Commander Chen looked confused. "What are the Void Ones?" "The reason our peoples joined together in the first place," the ancient dreamer explained. "Beings of living darkness that feed on consciousness itself. We dreamed their return, but they sensed our dreams. They'd been corrupting us through Vex, preparing for their invasion." "How long?" Jake asked. A new screen lit up, a deep space sensor feed. Massive objects were emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the sector, objects that seemed to swallow light itself. "They're already here," the ancient dreamer said. Krill's crystal skin pulsed with alarm. "The Royal Fleet. They're not here to attack us. They're running from something." Command Chen opened a channel to the fleet. High Commander Vex's face appeared, but he looked different, older, tired, afraid. "Little niece," he said when he saw Zara. "I hoped we'd have more time." "The quarantine protocols failed," Zara finished, understanding finally dawning. The mind gardens weren't prisons. They were quarantine zones, trying to stop the corruption from spreading. "And now they're incubators," the ancient dreamer added grimly. "Ready to hatch." Jake looked at the tactical display, his face pale. "Those void ships will be here in less than 10 minutes. The corrupted dreamers will infect any crystal tech they find, turning it into more incubators. And Haven Station is full of crystal tech." Commander Chen turned to her crew. "Begin evacuation procedures." "No." Zora's skin blazed with sudden light. "I have a better idea." She closed her eyes, connecting to the dreamer network. But instead of pushing outward, she pulled inward, drawing power from every crystal in the station. The corrupted dreamers had spread their infection through the network, but networks worked both ways. "The royal blood," she said, her voice resonating with crystal energy. "It's not just a key to share power, it's a purifier." The ancient dreamer's eyes widened. "Of course, the original sanctuary protocols, but the power required. We'll burn out every crystal in the sector," Zora finished, "including the ones in my skin, including you." "You'll die," Jake protested. Zora smiled at him. "No, we'll evolve." Before anyone could stop her, she plunged her hands into the nearest dreamer tank. Crystal energy exploded through the station. Every screen showed the same thing. Mind gardens blazing with cleansing light, corruption burning away, dreamers awakening with new purpose. The void ships recoiled as waves of crystal energy washed over them. Where the light touched, darkness dissolved. And in the center of it all, Zara began to change. Crystal patterns spread across her entire body, but these weren't just glowing lines. They were becoming part of her, transforming her into something that had only existed in the oldest dreamer visions. The first of the starborn, children of both peoples, meant to guide them against the darkness. As consciousness faded, she heard the ancient dreamer's voice. "The true war begins now. And thanks to you, we finally have a chance to win." Jake caught her as she fell, her new crystal skin humming with power. "What happens next?" he asked the ancient dreamer. She smiled mysteriously. "That depends on what she dreams." In the distance, the void ships were regrouping. The corrupted dreamers were defeated, but their masters weren't finished. And as Haven Station's sensors detected more void points opening across the galaxy, everyone realized the same thing. This wasn't just about saving a princess anymore. This was about saving everything. Return and rebellion. Zora floated in a tank of crystal-infused liquid, her transformed body pulsing with starlight. It had been 3 days since her metamorphosis, and the war room of Haven Station had changed dramatically. The walls were covered in living crystal that responded to thought, showing real-time maps of Void 1 incursions across the galaxy. Jake hadn't left her side once. He sat next to the tank, watching her new form with a mixture of awe and concern. Her purple skin was now laced with crystalline patterns that looked like constellations, and occasionally, small points of light would orbit around her like tiny stars. Her transformation is complete, the ancient dreamer announced, her silver scales reflecting the tank's glow. But she's choosing to stay in the dream state. She's seeing something important. Inside her mind, Zara was indeed seeing something, but it wasn't the future. She was seeing the past, the true past, playing out across millions of years. Her eyes snapped open. The void ones, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls sing. They're not invaders. They're coming home. The liquid drained from her tank as Commander Chen, Corell, and the others gathered around. Zara stepped out, gravitational forces seeming to bend slightly around her new form. "What do you mean, coming home?" Jake asked. "This galaxy was once their feeding ground," Zora explained, touching the crystal wall. "Images formed, ancient star systems teeming with life, then being consumed by darkness. But the first dreamers found a way to force them out. They used crystal technology to create a barrier between dimensions, trapping the void ones in the space between spaces. The dreamers were guardians," Corell realized. "And the mind gardens were built on the anchor points of the barrier," Zora finished. "The places where reality is thinnest. That's why they needed constant dreamer presence. The dreams themselves were maintaining the dimensional walls." Commander Chen's cybernetic eyes wavered as she processed this. "But the corruption weakened those walls." "Exactly." Zora touched another crystal, showing the approaching void fleet. "And now they're not just coming back. They're angry." Suddenly, the ancient dreamer gasped. Her silver scales turned black for a moment before she fought off the corruption attempt. They're in my head. All of our heads." The corruption wasn't just about turning dreamers into weapons. It was about learning our secrets. "How long until they break through completely?" Jake asked. The station shuddered as space itself seemed to twist. Through the crystal displays, they watched in horror as a massive tear opened in reality near Zora's homeworld. But what emerged wasn't a void ship. It was a city. A massive, impossible city of living darkness. "That's not an invasion fleet," Zora whispered. "That's their capital." The ancient dreamer fell to her knees. "They're going to recreate their civilization here, overwriting ours like a computer virus overwrites code. Reality itself will be corrupted." But Zara was smiling. Everyone stared at her. "Why are you smiling?" Jake asked. "Because now I understand what I really am." She touched her star-patterned skin. "The Starborn aren't just hybrids of surface dwellers and dreamers. We're something the Void Ones can't comprehend, a new form of consciousness that exists in all dimensions at once." She touched the crystal wall again, but this time, instead of showing images, the crystal began to grow, spreading across her arm, transforming into something that looked like living armor. "They think they infected our crystal technology," she said as the armor continued to form. "But we infected them too. Every corruption attempt gave us more information about their dimensional technology. And now, the armor completed itself, turning Zara into a being of crystal and starlight. Now we can fight them on their own terms." "We?" Jake asked. Zara touched his chest. Crystal patterns began spreading across his skin. "The human mind has something neither surface dwellers nor dreamers possessed: adaptability. That's why the crystal chose you first. You're going to be the second Starborn. Commander Chen stepped forward. Even with Starborn powers, we're massively outnumbered. No, we're not. Zara waved her hand, and the crystal walls showed new images, hundreds of secret resistance cells across the galaxy, all with access to crystal technology. Every person they tried to corrupt, every system they tried to infect, becomes a weapon against them. Because corruption goes both ways. And the Mind Gardens, Corell asked, will become transformation centers. Zora's eyes glowed with stellar fire. The Void Ones broke the walls between dimensions. Fine, let's show them what happens when we stop playing defense. The ancient dreamer laughed suddenly. Now I understand why my visions always stopped at this moment. You're not just planning to save our reality. I'm planning to invade theirs, Zora confirmed. They want to overwrite our world. Let's overwrite them first. As if in response, the Void City pulsed with dark energy. Reality rippled around it as more tears began to open. Jake's transformation was completing, his body now glowing with the same stellar patterns as Zora's. You know this is crazy, right? Says the human who broke into a planetary prison to save one alien girl. Fair point. He flexed his new crystal armor. So how do we start a multidimensional revolution? Zora looked at the assembled group. Humans, surface dwellers, dreamers, and now Starborn, and grinned. First, we're going to need a bigger station. Above them, the Void City began its reality-corrupting process. But for the first time in millions of years, the Void Ones felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Because in all their dimensional calculations, in all their careful corruptions and manipulations, they had never accounted for one critical variable. Love. The love of a human who would save an alien princess. The love of peoples who would protect each other across millions of years. The love that would give birth to stars in human form. And as Haven Station's crystal systems began their transformation sequence, as thousands of resistance cells activated across space, as reality itself prepared for war, one thing became clear. The real story was just beginning. The revolution. Haven Station was no longer a station. Under Zora's power, the entire asteroid had transformed into a massive crystal ship, its surface flowing like liquid starlight. Inside the transformed command center, reality itself seemed to bend around the two Starborn. All resistance cells report ready, Commander Chen announced, her cybernetic eyes now enhanced with crystal technology. The Void City has corrupted 30% of planetary surface. Look, Jake said, pointing to the dimensional displays. The darkness spreading from the Void City wasn't just corrupting physical space. It was rewriting the laws of physics themselves, creating zones where time moved backwards, where gravity pulled sideways, where thought became solid. But Zara saw something else. In the chaotic zones between normal space and void space, tiny points of light were appearing. Do you see it? She asked the ancient dreamer. Between the dimensions, the silver-scaled being smiled. Seeds. Every corruption zone is creating something new. Not seeds, Zara corrected. Eggs. The Starborn weren't just created to fight the Void Ones. We're meant to incubate the next stage of evolution. She touched the crystal wall, and a new image appeared, the true form of the Void Ones. They weren't the cosmic horrors everyone imagined. They were children, ancient children of the first universe, trapped in a cycle of consuming realities because they didn't know how to create. They're not evil, Jake realized. They're stuck, like a child having a tantrum because they don't know how to express what they need. Exactly. Zora's star patterns pulsed. That's why corruption goes both ways. We're not just learning their dimensional technology. They're learning how to dream. A massive shockwave rocked the crystal ship. The Void City was sending out tendrils of unreality, trying to absorb their vessel. Time to move. Commander Chen ordered. All resistance cells, initiate Protocol Starbirth. Across the galaxy, thousands of hidden crystal arrays activated, but they weren't attacking the Void Ones. Instead, they began resonating with the corruption zones, amplifying the chaos between dimensions. The ancient dreamer's eyes widened. "You're not fighting the corruption. We're accelerating it," Zara confirmed, but with a twist. She and Jake joined hands, their combined starborn power radiating out through the crystal networks. Everywhere the corruption touched, instead of reality being overwritten, it began to split, not breaking, but multiplying, creating new spaces between spaces. The Void City pulsed with confusion. This wasn't how reality was supposed to respond. Their corruption should be destroying, consuming, but instead, "We're giving them what they never had," Jake said. A choice. Through their enhanced senses, they could feel the Void One's reaction. First confusion, then curiosity, then something like joy as they realized they were no longer trapped in their cycle of consumption. The corruption zones were becoming nurseries, places where new forms of life and consciousness could emerge, combining the best aspects of all species: human adaptability, dreamer vision, surface dweller resilience, and Void one-dimensional mastery. But not everyone was happy about this. High Commander Vex's ship broke formation, weapons charging. "You'll doom us all." His voice boomed through the comm. "These spaces must remain separate." "Uncle." Zora's voice carried harmonic overtones that made Crystal sing. "Let go. Evolution isn't something you can control. Watch me." Vex's ship launched missiles at the crystal vessel, but the missiles never hit. As they entered the transformation zone around the ship, they changed, becoming schools of crystalline fish that swam through space itself. "Beautiful," the ancient dreamer whispered. Vex screamed in rage and did the unthinkable. He activated his own corrupt crystal implants, trying to force the old pattern of destruction. His ship began to transform into a miniature Void City. "Zara," Jake warned, "if he forces corruption here, it'll destroy the nursery spaces," she finished. "Unless." She reached out with her starborn senses and touched her uncle's mind. But instead of fighting his corruption, she embraced it, channeled it, showed him what she could see: the infinite possibilities being born in the spaces between spaces. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Vex's ship began to change again, its forced void transformation melting into something new. Through the crystal displays, they watched in awe as it became a garden, a true mind garden, floating in space. "I understand now." Vex's voice was different, filled with wonder. "This was always the plan." The dreamers knew. They dreamed of this moment. The ancient dreamer confirmed. A galaxy not of separate peoples, but of infinite combinations. Every corruption zone becomes a new universe. Every clash of powers creates new life. The Void City was changing too, its darkness becoming translucent, revealing the scared children at its heart. As Zara and Jake's power reached them, they began to change, growing, evolving, learning to create instead of consume. Commander Chen checked her displays. Transformation Zones report, 100% success. New dimensional spaces are stable and growing. "And the original reality?" Jake asked. Zara laughed. "Look outside." Through the crystal walls, they could see their home galaxy, but it was different now. The stars themselves had patterns of crystal and void running through them, creating a cosmic network of infinite possibilities. Ships of all species were transforming, adapting, becoming part of the new universal ecosystem. "So that's it?" Jake asked. "We won." "No." Zara took his hand. "We evolved. All of us. Even them." She pointed to the transformed Void City, which was now a shimmering nexus of dimensional gateways. "They're not destroyers anymore. They're gardeners, helping cultivate new realities." The ancient dreamer approached them, her silver scales now swirling with stars. "And what will you two do now?" "The Starborn have fulfilled their purpose." Zara and Jake shared a look. Their bodies were still transforming, becoming something even the dreamers hadn't foreseen. "I think," Jake said, "we're going to explore." There are a lot of new spaces between spaces, and they'll need guides, Zara added. Teachers, friends. She looked back at her uncle's garden ship, at the transformed Haven vessel, at the countless new forms of life emerging in the nursery zones. From a single act of kindness, a human saving a chained alien girl had grown a transformation that would echo across infinite dimensions. Besides, she smiled, starlight dancing in her eyes, someone needs to tell their stories. The ancient dreamer nodded. And what should we tell them when they ask how it all began? Jake grinned. Tell them it started with water, just a simple drink of water, given freely. And it ended, Zara finished, with an ocean of possibilities. Above them, reality continued to transform, not breaking but growing, creating new spaces for new dreams. And in a distant nursery zone, a new consciousness opened its eyes, looked up at the infinite cosmic garden, and began to dream its own story into being. Because that's how all great revolutions begin, with a dream of something more.